Action.
Hi, everyone. I'm Beth Johnson, and with me, as always, is my co-host, scientist Franck Marchis, and this is the Grudge Report, SETI Institute's science review of the latest Star Trek Discovery episode. Spoilers abound, so if you haven't watched this week's episode, or in this case, last week's episode, turn back while you still can. Hi, Franck. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Beth?
I am here. I am looking forward to a vacation. How about you?
Yeah, same thing. It's been a long year, so I'm hoping that finish it finally.
It has been a very long year. I'm sure everyone watching can agree. All right, so this week we are looking at the episode Terra Firma Part 2, which is the follow-up on, obviously, of last week's Terra Firma Part 1. We are back in the Mirror Universe. The opening credits were so cool. Did you notice the opening credits, Franck?
I noticed some changes.
Did you notice them?
Yes, I did notice that.
Okay. So one, the highlight color was all blue, which was like the first clue that something was different. But if you really look at it, it's mirrored. So when you look in the background, you can see that the text is flipped, and it really is. It's a mirrored opening credit. So I thought that really neat. I hate the mirror universe. I don't like being here, but okay, I'm willing to run with it. So we didn't have a lot of science in this episode, so I'm going to give the quick rundown, and then I'm going to poke you and see what you want to talk about, because I was at a loss. So we're back in Georgiou's past. She's trying to resolve this whole issue of her cells are being pulled apart by being too far from her universe of origin. We talked about this last episode. Vibrations, cells, a whole bunch of okay. And in this case, she's trying to make things better. So the Georgiou that is really from the mirror universe, that is the Terran Empress, is trying to go back in time, basically, and change the outcome by not having to kill Michael. That seems to be her big goal, is to convert Michael back to her side and then start making the changes. And as it turns out, this doesn't work. Michael is still Michael. Michael is still bent on overthrowing her mother, essentially, and it does not go well. You get to watch a lot of various cast members get killed in the process. Georgiou helps a Kelpian who is played by the same actor as Saru, but never actually named Saru. She gets to help him go through Vaharai and survive it. And he brings in another Kelpian, and they help try and protect her from another coup. And yeah, the most interesting part of this episode for me was when that was all said and done, and we learned that Carl is the guardian of forever, which is a lovely callback to previous Star Trek iterations. And then actually the doorway becomes the actual portal that we're familiar with from the Guardian of Forever episodes. So that was a really neat callback to all of that. However, in the process, we lost Georgiou. She goes through the portal to a space and time that will not pull her apart and will give her the opportunity to change how the outcomes of her life, essentially. And now I have a new cat because I'm in my office at my desk. So
I was about
not
to
the black
say,
one today.
Did you change the color of your cat?
No, this is Kimba. This is my little white lion, and he's obnoxious, but he loves my desk. So you'll see more of him now.
Okay.
So that's pretty much that. And then, of course, back on Discovery, they're still trying to figure out how to get to the ship inside the Vera Rubin Nebula. And honestly, I not a lot of science. So the only thing I really noted was in the Mirror Universe, they show up to capture Lorca's Lieutenant Dugan at Risa, and it looks different from what we're used to in the Prime Universe. So there's a ring system around it, which normally it doesn't have. And that was basically it. That's all I got. Okay. So how about you, Franck? What did you have from this?
Well, in my case, of course, I was interested in Planet Risa because So what you probably notice when they arrive with the spaceship, you see the planet partially in the shadow. And so you can see light of cities, and you can see kind of a luxurious vegetation on the illuminated side with continents and ocean. So it's a planet like our Earth, obviously, habitable. That I don't think they mentioned it's whether or not it's inhabited, but we can see the light of the cities. So there is a civilization there. And but what really called my attention, of course, is the presence of rings around this. It's an Earth-like planet with a ring. We talked about that last episode, saying that we don't have rings, but this one is an Earth-like planet with rings. So we see the rings from far away this time. So we're lucky that to be able to see the structure of the rings. You probably could explain better than me what the rings, how the rings form around planet exactly, what they are.
Well, it's likely. I mean, in this case, it's hard to know. It's Star Trek, so who knows? But without an example from our own system, we can only guess. And I would say that it would be similar to Saturn in that there might be a lot of bits of moon, maybe some ice, just things that have gotten close enough to get captured by this planet's orbit. But something like that, I'm going to say it had to be a moon that ended up somehow destroyed, maybe hit by another moon, and now you have fragments of both of them in orbit around the planet. And
then the fragments because there are probably other moons further away, maybe, the fragments will take this kind of shapes and what you see in the rings are basically some kind of periodic motion between the orbit of outer moons and the moon and the fragments inside the moon. So that's why you see those kind of tiny separation. And there is also concentration of material that make the color of the ring slightly different. It's also possible that some rings are shaped by bigger fragments that basically move.
Right, which we do see in Saturn, right? We have like a smaller moon that's inside the rings that actually creates a division and then sort of pulls along the fragments as it goes too.
We see the rings only.
So yeah, those are possibilities.
So I did not go through all the details of that. In Memory Alpha, Risa on the, I was about to say the normal universe, the Federation universe, as the
Prime universe.
The Prime universe, yes, has 2 moons.
Yeah, it has 2 moons, yes. So it's very possible that these moons somehow got destroyed together, or considering it's the Terran universe, they might have been destroyed from outside of things. A battle could have taken place. Who knows in this? I mean, I'm still trying to figure out what place it would have in the Terran Empire, because in the Prime universe, of course, it's a pleasure planet. It's a vacation destination. It's, everybody goes and drinks, and it's known throughout the series that that's what you do. That's where you're going to go. So I can't imagine that's a big thing for the Terrans, though. So I'm not sure. It was a kind of, it's sort of like a throwaway mention almost. Like it really, here's a name we want you to recognize, but we're not going to tell you anything more about it.
Exactly. This episode has no planets except when they go to see the Guardian, but that's all. Besides this, we are on the spaceship most of the time. So the science in the spaceship is always extremely advanced and incomprehensible for human beings from the 20th century like us. So there is no much science I can say about.
You don't want to talk about boosting subspace signals from?
No, I know you want me to talk about the boosting sub whatever, but no.
No, it's fine. I think my comment was okay, and then I was just happy to see Reno, really, because I missed her.
So there's something I want to talk about briefly, because I think it's the first time I'm noticing that in a Star Trek episode. They talk a lot about food, and they show food a lot. So, example, when Michael is in the jail in the Terran universe, she's getting some food and she refused to eat. So I look carefully because I have an infinite amount of time, obviously, and I stopped the images to look what she was eating, and then she eats sandwiches later on. So I'm noticing that in the Terran universe, as well as in the Prime universe, the food they are eating is very close to the food we're eating now. And that's kind of surprising. I'm not a specialist in this field, so I discovered that there is a field of research called food history. It's a subfield of history. They have their own papers, their own journals. One of them, the most famous one, and I want to say the name of it because it's in French, is called Petit Propos Culinaires. It was the first edition was in 1979, and apparently it's every month they publish one. There is also an entire book from Oxford University about food history, which has been published in 2012, where they describe the evolution of food on our own planet. And it's very interesting to see how what we were eating in the Middle Age is very different to what we're eating now. In the Middle Age, they were eating mostly, the poor people were eating mostly vegetable and cereals, because meat was very a luxury at the time. They were getting protein by eating beans as well. The rich people could hunt, so they have games. And then the meat supply was mostly pork and chicken. And they did not have all this beef that we have now, because they didn't really know how to, it's not very sustainable for most farmers. And if you live close to the sea, of course, you eat more fish. That's logical. That's what happened in the Middle Age. And then came the revolution of food. And they have the name for that, which I forgot, of course, because we are doing this show. I think it's the Amerindian Culinary Revolution or something like that, where basically the European continent and the American continent kind of merge their food. And what we're eating now is mostly a mix of the European food and the food from the American continent, potatoes, tomatoes, and also from the Asian continent, rice. Right. So now, 900 years later, the Middle Age, we are eating something completely different, okay? So I was expecting that the show happening in the year, you tell me the year again, sorry.
3189.
Yeah, so 1200 years later, we'll have a very different food, because the same should have happened in space. If you can travel in space, you discover new planets, new plants, new civilization, new culinary habits, and you're gonna take the best of it, of course. But this didn't happen in this future. So they eat. You remember what they were eating? Like what you have this dinner between Michael and Giorgio.
Right.
There is asparagus. I stopped the image step by step. So they're eating asparagus and some kind of sushi. Okay. The only exotic food they're eating is kelpian.
Right. Which, yikes.
Which is
yikes.
Maybe explain to the audience what exactly are the kelpian and what they eat. Why are they eating kelpians?
Well, so in the Prime universe, there was the whole thing of the kelpians had another species that they shared their planet with that was essentially calling them when they would go through the Vaharai, and basically telling them that they would go mad and it would kill them. So they were culling them before that happened. So in the mirror universe, in the Terran universe, the same thing is happening, except now it's the Terran Empire is telling them this, that they're culling them before this happens, so that they don't go mad, and then they eat them. And no, it just horrifies me. So, and we learned about this when we were when we were in season 2 and originally doing the whole mirror universe thing. So
yeah, it's horrifying you because of course we don't eat kelpians, but I'm pretty sure that if people like in the US, people are horrified to hear. Some people are horrified to hear that Europeans eat rabbit, for instance, right? So we also have the culture has also an influence on what you eat. And
Right.
in the show, it's very homogeneous. And that's disappointing to me, that we spend a lot of our time eating, and it's kind of a social interaction as well. And in the show, they show a lot of people eating, and they're not very creative. They basically bring food from the 20th century to the table. So we know they're eating, but there is no really big stories behind it. So I'm demanding now that we spend some time on this encyclopedia that we Memory Alpha, and we basically design some new kind of food for the future Star Trek show. And I'm going to ask the author of the Star Trek show to spend some more time to be more creative in the culinary habit of those species, please.
All right. So you've heard it here. Franck demands more interesting 32nd century food.
Yes. And I don't know what it will be. Seriously, I'm thinking about it. I have no idea, but that's great. Let's be creative. Let's try to find some great things to eat.
It's interesting that you mention it, because Star Trek has always sort of had a love of food and has always sort of featured it in a way. Like, I remember watching the movies, and there was a big deal made out of Klingon food. And you're right, we haven't seen that same sort of differentiation between like whose cultures have what. And maybe it would blend more at this point because of the fact that they had the Federation and things might have shuffled around. But yeah, asparagus seems kind of.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's an interesting challenge, and I support you here, Franck. I support you.
So what do they eat in the Prime Universe? Do you remember the scene? There is a moment where they talk about food a lot in the scene.
Well, they're giving Jet a hard time about eating in the engineering room, and she's eating licorice. She's eating candy. She's just eating licorice. And I'm like, okay, so I guess we're still doing that. Now, to be fair, those guys are still from, 930 years earlier. So they might look for comfort foods, and they might be asking the replicators to do, to make stuff that is comfortable for them. So I could see that happening.
So of all the candies and all the comfort food we created over the past 20 years, 900 years later, licorice is still something that people like. It's amazing.
Well, remember that she comes forward 930 years. She's bringing this with her from the past. So it might not be something that other people, Adira doesn't recognize what it is. So it's very possible that, this is something she's, asked the computer to make. And of course, the computer has all of that and the sphere data. So I can't imagine that making licorice would be all that difficult for the replicator at that point.
So do you like licorice? Because licorice is one of the things that divide the people in.
No.
You don't?
No, I am in the I do not like licorice camp. I do not like fennel. I do not like licorice. Nope. It doesn't like me back. So it's a fair relationship. So
yeah, there is a store in San Francisco where they have all type of licorice, and I bring my kids over there, and I'm teaching them to be French, because French people eat this licorice a lot, and that we try all of them. And it's an acquired taste. Now they are totally addicted. 15 years later, they love it.
I mean, if it's fruit flavored, I'm much more interested. But just regular black licorice, I can't do.
Okay, well, that's all for me. We can talk about the end of the show when they tell all the great stuff about Philippa. This is a nice scene. I like it. You all know I'm a sap already. I've already said I've cried at many things in the series so far. This was just another one of them. And the little comments that they make about Philippa and who she was and how she changed and all of that, just it reminded me of sort of like the traditional Irish wake, get together, bring a drink, tell stories. Yeah.
And I really loved that they tried really hard to say the nice things, but they just kept coming back to saying the truthful things too. So, she was a pain in the butt, and she was honest, but brutally so. It was good, and I will tell you that my hope right now is that we get Philip a spinoff, because I want to see more of her and her butt kicking adventures.
Good. Yeah, me too.
So that's where I'm at. All right. I think that kind of sums it up, huh? It was just not a sciencey episode for us. So
Well,
we're going to go into this.
This week, after Christmas, we're going to have a new episode. So even tomorrow, yeah.
Yeah.
Tomorrow. So,
yeah, we have a new episode tomorrow.
Let's do it through the 25th.
No. But I will talk to you this weekend, I'm sure.
Okay.
I do have a teenager, so Christmas still has some meaning in my house. So, all right. Well, that's it. So we'll be back with this week's episode, and don't forget to subscribe, ring the bell for notifications. And as a reminder, we are a 501c3 nonprofit. So if you feel like heading over to SETI.org and making a donation, that keeps us up and running, and we can keep making these series and maybe make them better as we go along, and can add some cool tech. So that's what we're hoping. Feel free to leave a comment or 5 with your thoughts, questions, all of that. And thank you for watching, everybody. We'll see you next episode.
Bye-bye.
Bye.